Right. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this session, Communicating for Influence No Matter Where You Are. I am Stacey Trapani, and I'm the owner of Trapani Communications. We have a company in Midland that has been here for 26 years, and our focus is on strategic communications, public relations, issues management, program implementation, and we do that for a variety of clients in the Great Lakes Bay region and beyond. One of our clients is Northwood University, so quick shout out to Julie and Chris, and thank you for inviting me to be here today. So by now we're all getting settled in our work from home situation. Maybe we're still adjusting some, but working from home is getting to be a little bit more normal. It really is. So today, what I want to talk about is not necessarily tips for you for how you should communicate while you're working from home, because I think by now you know how to adjust your webcam or make sure your PJs aren't showing when you're on your video calls. So what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit different take on working from home. And my challenge for you today is to see this as a way to advance your career. So you might be thinking, is she nuts? How is this going to advance my career? I can't see anybody. I can't interact. I'm in this little space that's not meant for me to even be working at. But today, what I hope to do is flip your thinking so we can see how to make this into an opportunity for you. And that opportunity is all related to not just communicating well, but communicating for influence. So let's get started. So effective communication is the most important skill any employee can possess. Of course, I would say that. I'm a communicator, but it's not just me. Everybody believes it. Every study that you see doesn't matter. All businesses are looking for people who know how to communicate. I found a study by the International Journal of Business of managers, and they ranked the incompetencies of new college students coming in, so their incompetencies. Effective communication was the number one skill that these folks lacked. And on the other side of that, the Journal of Small Business did a similar study, and they found that in successful entrepreneurs, so those people who had started their own companies and most successfully led them, effective communication skills was their number one skill that they listed as contributing to their success. So we all know that communication is important, and really it affects all aspects of our life. It's not just about work. It's about better marriages, better relationships, more career success, higher earnings, having more confidence. All of these good things are grounded in effective communication. And in my world, effective means influential. So these are all things we know, right? And you've heard them lots of times. So then why is this hard for people? Why can't people do it? And I think one of the reasons is because we don't really understand how we can make small changes or what things we can do to our presentations, our phone conversations, our emails to really take our communication to the next level and really make it communication for influence, not just communication for the sake of communication. So let's look at this. Let's look at what influential communication is about. And really, it's about not what we are doing to others, communicating to them, giving them a message, imparting knowledge. Really, it becomes what we are for others. So how do we help people? How do we help them do their jobs? How do we make it easier to talk about a program? All these things that you communicate about in your work. Everybody is influential. So some people might think, no, because of my job, because of my role, I'm not influential. It's not true. Everybody is influential, and influential communicators have several traits in common. First off, when they communicate, they're clear, they're concise, they get to the point, and they're compelling. They make it a message that people want to hear. So influential communicators motivate and persuade. They're engaging, they're captivating, they know what they want to say, they demonstrate their value through a good, honest approach, they ask good questions, listen well, they check for understanding. You know who these people are. These are the people who look directly at you and you know you have their undivided attention. They assimilate what you say and they can say it back to you. They are the kind of people that we all wish that we could be more of the time. And there's something else about influential communicators. They're really easy to follow. They make natural leaders because they relate to people. We get it when they talk. We know what they mean. There's a lot of job security in being a leader right there. And the world is incredibly short of good leaders. So there's a great reason to be more of a communicator for influence. So something else influential communicators is real. Real is about bringing our true selves to work every day. It means you're the one who shows up, not who you think you should be, but who you are, your strengths, your faults, your quirks, your passions, your crazy hair like this guy, all of it. Sometimes that real part isn't always beautiful, but it's always true and it's authentic. And we hear that word all the time, authentic communication. It's important to be authentic. It's important to be transparent. Why do people keep saying it? Because it's important. Because that's what's lacking. That's what everybody wants. They want to get rid of corporate jargon and corporate speak and not being able to communicate one-on-one like they should. So sometimes that real part isn't always beautiful, but that's okay. That's all right, because that's part of what being real is. So let me give you an example from my own experience. A job I had shortly out of college. I worked at an ad agency, and the culture there was terrible. It was tense. It was sort of a no-fail environment, very high pressure, lots of deadlines. Things needed to get done very quickly. The culture and the people, because of the way they acted, it made me very tense. It was critical and unforgiving, and I really disliked working there because I was afraid of everything that I did. And in the end, the days there were such a struggle for me that I finally decided I can't work here anymore. It was so unnecessary. And in a creative field, you would think it should be absolutely opposite, but it wasn't. So the very first lesson I learned way back then was that culture can teach you something. It can teach you how not to be yourself, how not to ask questions, how not to be able to contribute at your best level. Or your culture can teach you it's okay to fail, it's okay to take risks, it's okay to try things that I hadn't thought of. So at our company, that's kind of the environment that we try to foster at our agency and within our clients too. I actually have a client who said to me last week, you're better than my pastor. And I don't know what I was doing. I wasn't praying. But it turns out I'm her sounding board, and it was valuable to her to be able to talk to me about some of these things that were on her mind. I was a trusted source for her. And I know you all have people like that. And sometimes you're that person too, a trusted resource for people who need to vent occasionally. So probably many of you have heard of Brene Brown. She is a researcher, and she studies people and vulnerability and what makes us tick and what makes us successful. And her position, one of her positions, is if we want to reignite innovation, we have to rehumanize work. So what does this say? This says to me that it's pretty clear that we've taken the human out of the work, and it's just all work. And we need to get people to slide back into the human side of the work. And how do we do that? How do we make work more human? How do we communicate at that more human level? One of the things I propose is to look at people's intentions, not their actions. In my experience, I found very few people mean to be evil or mean to be hurtful. It really is in how we take it or what's going on in the circumstance. And let me give you a quick example. I've been working on some coronavirus communications for a company based in Ohio, and they, got a little tense. A lot of things were happening. It was getting a little concerning because of all the things that they were needing to do in their plants. And I was working directly with the CEO, and he was kind of telling me things that he wanted me to do, and I was just kind of getting them done. And I didn't really think very much about the interaction because I was just trying to understand what they wanted and make sure that they got it. Well, he called me later and he apologized for being short with me on the phone. And I didn't really even realize he was short, but then when I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I could tell he was a little tense, but I didn't take it personally. I didn't think that it was directed at me. I looked at his intention and said, his intention is to get this done right, and he's under a lot of pressure, and it's not about me right now. But boy, did I appreciate that he did that. It made a huge impact on me for the CEO of a company to call me and say, look, I'm sorry, I was short, and I just wanted you to know that I apologize. It was a very nice thing to do, and it really set a tone for our relationship that will last for as long as we're working together. So some other things that can help you rehumanize your work, let down your shield. Admit it if you don't understand. A lot of times I don't understand a lot of things, and the only way I will understand is somebody will let me admit that and let me discuss it with them. Be generous to others, to who don't understand. Be generous with your ability to explain things to people. Be courageous, take risks. This means getting vulnerable and letting others do the same. I'm a writer, so I feel vulnerable all the time. I'm always birthing these little babies, and I want everybody to think they're beautiful. And so it's sometimes a very tough position to be in when you're writing all these creative things and you're sending them out to people and you want them to like them. So it's a very vulnerable job. Be grateful. Be grateful. Practice gratitude. Think about the things that are around you. And now more than ever, gosh, I've just been so much more grateful for all of my blessings and all the great things around me because I see how hard it is for some people. Don't let those negative people get to you. You will never beat them. Just stay away from them. Be positive and demonstrate your positivity to other people. And do all these things while you're communicating, right? Clear, concise, compelling, real communication. Make this an opportunity to really strengthen your team. Get to know one another in new ways. You can really do this. There's time. We all have time. I feel like I have so much time because all my events are canceled and all my community things are canceled. So let's look at a couple examples of people who are extremely good, influential communicators. So we start with Martin Luther King Jr., and of course, he's one of the most influential communicators in all of history. In this quote, he's speaking to college students to convince them to work for change in the civil rights movement. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Is that pretty motivating? Does that make you want to do something? It motivates me. 28 words in that phrase. All of them are one syllable, except for 3 of the words. And Martin Luther King was an educated man, but he knew how to talk to people. Clear, concise, compelling, very real. The I Have a Dream speech, I think, is without question one of the best speeches of all time. And I think it's one of the best examples I can think of to demonstrate this point. Every word in that speech is well chosen. I just read it just as I was preparing for this presentation. And if you haven't seen it lately, it's just really worth a read. So now let's talk for a minute about knowing what you want to say. So legend has it that Ernest Hemingway was having lunch in Paris with several of his friends, all writers, and he claimed that he could write a 6-word story and make it shorter than any other story that anybody else could write. So he put a bet on the table. All the writers participated in the bet, and they all said, okay, well, I'll try to write the shortest story we can write, and whoever's got the best short story with the fewest words will win the bet. So he had this in his mind, and he wrote his story on the napkin, and he passed it around, and he ended up winning the bet. And this is what he wrote. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. 6 words, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Look at how much they say. What happened to the baby? The baby died, right? In the beginning, The parents were excited. They bought the baby shoes. They had the baby shoes. The pregnancy went on. Something happened to the baby. The baby never wore the shoes. They needed to get rid of the shoes. Just look at the story there. 6 words. 6 words. We spend a lot of time talking, but how much time do we spend stepping back and asking ourselves, what is the best way to convey this message using the fewest words possible? What will compel people to action? How can I influence this person or situation? It doesn't take a lot of slides with charts and graphs and pictures. It can be just a few chosen words. For sale, baby shoes, never worn. When I coach writers, I ask them to take what they wrote and then I say, cut that down by 25%. Almost always this can be done, and sometimes by a lot more. My team is probably laughing at this because they know this is what I do. I cut. I make everything shorter. But I encourage you to try it. Cut down what you just wrote, email, I don't care what it is, by 25%. Trust me, the recipient will thank you. In my experience, people are long when they really don't know what they want to say. So, okay, I know I need to send an email about this topic, so I'm just going to start writing it, da-da-da. And next thing you know, they've rambled all the way down the block and around the courthouse and back. Know what you want to say before you say it. So this is what I tell people. Before you write a single word, write down your number one key message. What is the main thing you want people to take away from that email, that presentation, whatever it is you're doing? One thing, not 10 things, one thing. And then your writing will be so much easier because you won't be rambling and working around a topic and a subject. If it needs to be 2 things, that's okay. If it needs to be 3 things, fine, but no more than 3, okay? But usually 1. What's the one thing? And then recently, just to talk a little bit about the words you use and your word choice, recently we wrote a blog about the words we banned in our writing. So these are words take up space and they don't add any value. So here we go. I'm going to tell you some of them so you cannot use them anymore. Let's start with very. Doesn't have any meaning anymore in our language. Very is a useless word. Some, that, just, virtually, got, so I find myself using that a lot. Actually, in terms of, these are just a few, and you can find the blog on our social media if you want to go look at a few more, but many times these words can be eliminated and you can't even tell they're gone in a sentence. They're just gone. And when we talk about the word very, for example, everybody in our office knows very is not a word that we use. And so if you say very always tells me that you didn't do your work to find a good word. So if it's very stressful, how else could you say that? First off, stressful probably will do. Maybe it's stressful beyond imagination. Oh, look at how much different that sounds. So think about your word choice and how you can get rid of lazy words, I call them, and replace them with good words. Another tip is to use this mantra: do, feel, know. I have a client who swears by this. She insists every communication includes what we want people to do, how we want them to feel, what we need them to know. And she makes sure that it's clear at the end of a communication, a presentation, a webcast, whatever, that people understand what we're expecting in the do, feel, know category. So clear, concise, compelling, real. Those are the things we're working on. So what's the benefit of all this influential communication for you? So what you'll get in return: better working relationships, greater productivity, happier people, better morale, more time for strategic thought. You're not just, spinning your wheels. New clarity for what you're doing, less rework. And all of those things, they translate to career success and new opportunities and unexpected opportunities that can come your way just because people think, oh my gosh, person's so easy to communicate with. I will tell you that people believe that communication is one of the hardest things to teach. And if you walk into a job with excellent communication skills, but maybe you don't know the area as well, people are so willing to treat that, to train that, but it's hard to train good communication. And when you go into a job already strong in that, you have a competitive advantage, heads over tails. So have I convinced you yet that influential communications can be a career advantage? I sure hope so. So now comes to the part where I tell you what to do next, right? How will you communicate differently now? But the reality is I can't do that. It's up to you. My guess is you know what you need to do based on your team, your situation, your needs, your skills, how you work. As I've been talking, I bet you probably thought of things that you could do right now in your own life that you could apply to communicating more effectively. So my challenge to you is when the webcast gets done, take 5 minutes after this call ends. Write down a few things that you think you can do to start today to boost your career advantage by learning how to communicate with influence. So that is all I have for today. Just a quick summary slide of some of the things that I've been saying, and my contact information is down there if you'd like to send an email or call with any more questions. But we are going to take a little bit of time for a Q&A, so I think we have a few minutes left to be able to let people ask questions if they'd like. And so I am going to X out of this presentation real quickly so that I can see the blue jeans. Okay, and so I've got, I don't see any questions on the Q&A, and I have a couple moderators working back there behind the scenes who maybe can tell me if they're seeing anything or if there's any. I see a little bit on the chat, but no questions there. So this is your chance if you'd like to put a couple questions on the Q&A. We would be happy to answer them. So, okay, somebody says, can you share the useless words with us list again? Yeah, I absolutely can. Let me go back to that slide. So I don't have it up on the slide, but I can tell you some of those useless words that we have, and maybe you have some of your own. Very, we talked a lot about that. Some, that. People put that in front of a lot of things. A lot of times you can get rid of that. Just, virtually, got. So, a lot is another word that you see. People always say a lot when they could pick a better word that really is more descriptive. Actually, in order to. So a lot of times you'll see in order to in writing, and you can take off in order altogether, and to makes as much sense. It's just perfectly fine, and you've just killed out 2 words there. Same with in terms of. Those are just a few. And like I said, if you want to go look on our social media, I think you'll be able to find the blog and see the rest of them. So somebody asked, could you expand on how this would work in a relationship? Okay, interesting. I'm not a relationship coach or doctor or guru, but I think in relationships, communication is everything. So, we talked about, one of the things I mentioned was looking at people's intentions, not in what you, and how you perceived it. What were they trying to do? So it's really a matter of understanding how people see things and understanding that it's probably not necessarily all about you. You know, I mentioned Brene Brown earlier, and she talks about the stories that we tell ourselves in our heads. So-and-so was kind of a jerk to me, so he doesn't like me, for example. Well, maybe what's going on is so-and-so just got off the phone and found out some bad news. And now they have to work or they have to get on this call and they're not ready for it and they don't want to be there. Maybe that's why they were a jerk. Maybe it had nothing to do with the fact that they don't like you. But we tell ourselves stories because they fill in the insecurities that we have. And so that's one of the, that's one of the things that I personally have found helpful in my own relationships is to try to stop telling myself stories and look at people's intention. So I hope that's helpful. So I have, what would be your advice if you're trying to communicate with a client or colleague that has poor communication skills? Oh, that's a good one. I think that if the person is open to coaching, sometimes you can say, these are the things that work in our office. And when we're communicating, these are the things that we have found that work. And here are a couple of things that I'd like you to work on. You can be very specific about it. Know what you want to say. Put it in the terms that so the person doesn't feel completely humiliated, of course, by what you're saying. But put it in terms like, I want you to be successful here. And some of the things that we need to do here to be successful are to communicate this way, or these are how our emails always go out. This is how we talk to people when we're working with clients, those kinds of things. And so I think that's one piece of advice I would give. I think it's a tough challenge because effective communication is practiced, and you really need to keep trying and keep working on it all the time. And that's one thing that, this is what we do for a living, but we still are working on it all the time too. We're learning new things. Our world is changing. We're facing unprecedented times and things are always different. And so we're always trying to learn too. And so that's something that is a benefit though. It benefits us to continue working on these communication skills. And there's so much we can do and there's so much we can all do. And one of the things, if you would like to go find our blog on LinkedIn, there's a blog on LinkedIn that has the words on it, the banned words. So I still see a couple more questions coming through on what more banned words are. Go ahead and check out our LinkedIn site, and you can find the blog there. And it's under me, Stacey Trapani. So that might be helpful. And we don't blog as often as we'd like to because we're a little bit busy, but there are some blogs on there. There are other blogs on there that I think you might find very helpful and relevant to what you're doing. So there's really not a name if you just go look under mine. So here's another question I wanted to real quick. Okay, it's 12:28. How can you be concise without sounding or seeming rude or curt? That's a good question because there's a difference between being short with somebody and using well-chosen phrasing and well-chosen words to communicate what you want to say. And so really it's all about your posture, your inflection, your tone, how you present the information. All of those things can help not seem short while you're communicating, but they can seem more authentic though when you look the person in the eye and do all those things we talked about that provide authentic communications. Then that way you won't be feeling like you're being short with somebody. You're looking at them, you're listening, you're being active in your interaction with them. So that is, I'm looking on the chat just to see if there's anything else. And I'm sure there are questions up here that I missed because there were quite a few. So I apologize if I've missed your question, but the presentation is going to go out with the slides and a video presentation. So you will be able to get my contact information on that on that last slide. If there's anything you have questions about, feel free to send me an email or give us a call. We're not actually answering the phone at the office, but we will be able to get the message and get back to you. So I hope that you all have a really good day, and thanks for joining us today, and thanks very much to Northwood for inviting me to be here. All right, have a good day. Bye now.